Hollow, cocking with a hot pin. Yeah. You can't kill it with this glove, it will not fit. Evidence will not stick. Rapping with a self-respecting southerner. So bro, what's in your pot? Those are not grits. Spin bars, I stand behind mine. Yeah. Sentences I serve, maximize guidelines. My lawyer can't give me his advice when he's beasts that I murder carry mandatory minimums of life. Yikes. In case you didn't get the point, we spit bars.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, kings and queens, and toddlers, adults, kiddies, all y'all in between. Welcome to another edition of The Maximum Sentence, where there's conviction behind the bars. I'm your man, AJ Throwback. Great to be here with you on this Sunday evening, a much warmer Sunday than the last 2 days, at least here in the DMV. So appreciate everybody for tuning in this evening. I think I already have a shout out to my sis, always with the support, my sis Lady Crawley on the check-in. Appreciate you as always. You know it's time. You know what I'm saying? It's Sunday. Get to talk lyrics, get to talk music, and get to wrap up my latest single, at least the A side of my latest single, Temple Thrills, which if you don't already have, please make sure that you hit up my Bandcamp page, ajthrowback.bandcamp.com. Once again, ajthrowback.bandcamp.com. Temple Thrills, featuring my brother in love, Michael Jalil. Also backed with Molly Webb Walker, which we will get into next Sunday at noon. So definitely make sure that y'all stay tuned for that. But once again, if you want to get that single, if you haven't gotten it already, and you want to support, go to my Bandcamp page, ajthrowback.bandcamp.com, or you can go to my website, bammllc.net. Once again, that's bammllc.net. You go to the homepage, you can honestly connect with pretty much everything from there. You can connect with the music, you can connect with previous episodes of The Maximum Sentence, you can connect with the Return to Black Broadway podcast, a little bit of everything. And if you're feeling the merch that you see on me right now, and I gotta say, I wore this shirt on purpose today because let me tell y'all, it was quite a day to be around a whole bunch of kids at a kid museum. It was cool, it was fun, but it was a lot of energy, a lot of not saying excuse me, people darn near about to run you over. And that was just a preview before getting to Walmart. Walmart was even worse than the kid museum, believe it or not, because you got kids and adults who don't watch where they're going. So it was like, yeah, after the long, hard day of peopling, yeah, I need a drink after this jump. So if you're feeling the gear, definitely make sure that y'all support Batch, Balancing Act Trinkets and Clothing House. You can go to my website, which is bammllc.net/shop Batch. Once again, that's bammllc.net/shop Batch. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram at batch.202. Once again, batch.202. Or on Twitter at batch_202. Once again, batch_202. All right. Now that we got the shameless plugs out the way, let me see. I think I got what's going on, my man, Illville, the producer, on the check-in. Always appreciate you and appreciate you sharing as well. Appreciate my family being here, my folks. You know what I'm saying? Definitely supporting. Always appreciate it. If y'all have not seen, and speaking of Lady Crawley and Illville, Lady Crawley had an awesome interview with Kev Choice yesterday on the Hour of Power. If you have not seen that, go to her Instagram page, which is lady_Crawley, the number 7. Once again, lady_Crawley, the number 7, and check out the Hour of Power with Kev Choice. What a great interview she had yesterday. And my man Illville, the producer, he was on with the legendary DJ Epps on Thursday. So make sure that y'all go follow my man Illville, the producer. That's Illville, ILVEAL_DA_producer, just like it sounds. Once again, that's Illville_the producer. Check out his interview with DJ Epps. All right. So, I always gotta plug my folks. It's not just about me. It's a family affair. Y'all know how we do. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it. We at the 5-minute mark. Let's go ahead and kick off. Y'all know how I do. I don't do too much talking when it comes to the bars. I let the bars speak for themselves. So let's go ahead and get into this third verse of my latest single, Temple Thrills.
So as a long brown hair brush strokes across the night sky, she made me say goodbye to the nice guy. But before I felt the highs I've had in life, heavy worship is completed with a sacrifice. I said, I don't know what I could get. She responded with, start up with the places that you live. Like dorm room, shower stalls, basement on your mama house. Watching cartoons, gaining knowledge on your mama couch. But I gave a little more than what was asked. Dressing room, sandy beaches, couple cars I could've crashed. Soiree in the spring, special moments with my classmates. Gave up half hours with my granny in the last days. Days in Marriott's, Hilton's and Ramadas. Couple $1,000 had this devil wearing Prada. Brushed off, even lost friends over nonsense. All because of I knew the tags and women's stones red. Gave up my computers and the PCRs. Nickelodeons with Hollis barely eating bras. Submitting leader jobs, let's see these bars. Paying tickets off and I can be in park or even speeding cars. But she would be at odds when I meet and greet with God. Only when I needed did I speak to even speak to God. Too ashamed to walk up to that altar call. Every shirt, couldn't get the lipstick on my collars off. Member of a church without a cookbook. Pastor was a master fishing man, had a good hook. I ain't saying I resolved overnight. Just acknowledging I chose to see her wrongs over right. All the darkness over light, her mirages over sight. Got me with the booby trap, but her bra was overhyped. As I said, what we had, it felt great. Can't erase past, but you can't use my blood for your stained glass.
Yeah. So that's the third verse of Temple Thrills. We about to break this thing down. Maybe not necessarily bar for bar, but for the most part, bar for bar. So let's start from the beginning where I say, so as a long brown hair brush strokes across the night sky, she made me say goodbye to the nice guy. But before I felt the highest high I've had in life, every worship is completed with a sacrifice. Every worship is completed with a sacrifice. So anything that you worship, whether God is the worship, and y'all know me, I've been saying lately, I've been quoting 1 Samuel 15 verse 22, obedience, the summation of the verse. So I'm taking out a piece of the verse where it says obedience is greater than sacrifice. So when it comes to God, you're more so being obedient versus focusing on the sacrifice. But with anything else, you might focus on how obedient you are to it. Whatever your idol is, whatever your God is, whatever you make your God your idol, either you're obedient to it or you sacrifice for it, and or you sacrifice for it. So in this case, for this song, because the subject is sex, because the idol is sex and the pursuit thereof, of course there has to be something that's given up. So of course the first thing that I've been talking about in these past two episodes is let me get my thoughts together. The first thing is the relationship with God. That's the first thing. And that's going to circle back around once we get toward the end of the verse. But that's the first sacrifice right there. Because in order to pursue sex, specifically talking from a Christian perspective, and you're talking out of the confines of marriage, is fornication. So you giving up what you know is the right thing to do as a Christian, which the word says, and you're saying, you know what? Bump all that. I'm tempted. I'm going to give in to my temptations. I'm going to, do what I want to do. Now, granted, the thing is, for me, when I lost my virginity, I didn't lose it to no rando. It was to a woman that I was dating for probably a good 2 years before I actually lost my virginity. It was a less than memorable experience, probably for the both of us, but I know definitely for me, and if I'm saying that, then I know it was that way for her. I'm not gonna sit here and say, I tore the house down, or any of that. But at the same time, it's like all of that panting, all of that yearning, all of that wanting, and it was like, okay, for something that it was like when it happened, it was like, that's it, okay. Why was I so pressed? You know what I mean? But then you fast forward to the lines where I say, let me see, every worship is completed with a sacrifice. I said, I don't know what I could give. She responded with, start off with the places that you live, like dorm rooms, shower stalls, basement of your mama house, watching cartoons, gaining knowledge on your mama couch. So dorm rooms, that's important because that's where I lost my virginity. I lost my virginity in college to the woman that I was dating in college. You know what I'm saying? But then you get to shower stalls. Like, I'm not going to get into specific, I'm not naming any names. Y'all know me. I'm not that type of person. But the girl that I was dating after her, that covered a lot of ground. That covered the shower stalls. When I started talking about dressing rooms, sandy beaches, couple cars I could have crashed. Like, that whole relationship right there, in and of itself, was reckless because of the dissatisfaction from the previous situation. And then it's like, okay, now I feel like I have to make up for it. Now I feel like I have to overcompensate for what I didn't get in the last situation. So it's like, now I'm a wild out because I felt like the girl I was dealing with before was approved and I wasn't. I was a little bit more willing to experiment. I was more willing to try, you know. Whereas her is like, I feel like she wanted to do it, but she didn't really want to do it. And then on top of that was control issues that was going on. So it was a lot of things at play in that situation. Whereas I got to the next situation and it was like, oh, she freewheeling it. All right, let's go. You know, like she fed into a lot of the things that I wanted to do. But here's the kicker. And this is not necessarily the thing. I don't know if I necessarily allude to this. So I'm going to wait until I get toward the end of the verse. Because sometimes, y'all know me, I say something and I forget how profound it is when I say it until I get to the bar. And then it's like, I start unpacking the bar from there. It's like, that's where I addressed it. All right. So, like dorm room, shower stalls, basement of your mama house. Basement of your mama house. Now, you know, my mom was very much don't be having sex in my house. Like a lot of our mamas, you know. Now, granted, I was in my 20s, so it's not like I was a teenager, but still, her whole thing was like, don't be having sex in my house. I was still having sex with my mom, you know. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and sugarcoat it like I wasn't. Like, look, when moms went to sleep, I sneak a joint in and, yeah, you know, do what I needed to do. Because a lot of times it's like I wasn't trying to get no hotel room, you know. Depending on who I was dealing with, couldn't do it at their spot. So it's like, all right, well, what we got? We either got my mama basement in a car or the hotel. Those are the choices basically. But look at how pressed that I was in order to get this thing or like this pursuit of something that is like, it's supposed to be sacred. And if it's sacred, you don't even have to do all of that. I mean, that's number one right there. You know what I mean? But fast forward in a couple more lines. But I gave a little more than what was asked. Dressing room, sandy beaches, couple cars that could have crashed. I already covered that part. Soiree in the spring, special moments with my classmates. Gave up half hours with my granny in her last days. Now let me unpack that last bar specifically. I can unpack those last two bars because soiree in the spring, special moments with my classmates. I wanted to go. We had a spring soiree my senior year. And instead of going, first and foremost, the outfit that I wanted to wear for the soiree, I couldn't even fit anyway because I had gained weight by that point. So I was already kind of feeling self-conscious about that. But, you know, me and my girlfriend at the time, we was like, all right, we'll bump that soiree. We can go have fun. And I think we ended up going to where she lived. She lived right outside of Albany, New York at the time. So I went to right outside of Albany, kicked it with her for like a weekend instead of going to the spring soiree. But that was one of many moments that I ended up missing out on because I was chasing after her. I was worried about, you know, spending so much time with her and in a relationship that ended up not even working out. Now, granted, you know, it was fun while it lasted, but at the same time, it's like, look how many moments I missed out on. I missed out on spending time with my fellow classmates, my fellow seniors, and, you know, other people who weren't necessarily seniors, but specifically fellow seniors. I missed out on that time because I was so busy chasing behind this woman. and chasing behind, that thrill. And so it was that. But the last bar that I mentioned, gave up half hours with my granny in her last days. I could have gone home to DC. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, she passed, I want to say it was March of 2001. Probably a few months, like 2 months before I graduated from college. And she passed away. She was my last maternal grandparent to pass away. And so, but the thing is, I knew she was in the hospital. And I had the opportunity to go see her in the hospital, go home, go see her in the hospital. But I made up excuses. I was like, well, if I go home, that means I gotta spend money to go home, which is more money than just going to Albany. Then on top of that, if I take the bus, it's a 12-hour, 11, 12-hour ride. Or if I drive home, it's a 7, 8-hour ride. I made up all of these excuses just not to go home. And I valued spending time up there more than I valued spending time with my grandmother in her last days. Now, granted, me and my maternal grandmother, we weren't like, I wouldn't say that I was closer to, here's the odd thing. I was closer to my father's parents, my paternal grandparents, than I was my maternal grandparents. But I've always been closer to my mother than my father. You know what I'm saying? And don't get me wrong, like, I loved my father. My father was my hero. But at the same time, like, because of a lot of the things that he dealt with in his life, I was closer to my mother. And she, she primarily raised us because, my dad, he was going through his issues. But I wasn't super close with my mother's mother, but I was close enough. I spent enough time with her for there to be a relationship there. And the fact that I didn't go home when I had the opportunity to go home, because once again, I'm out here chasing after this woman. It was just like when she passed, I just felt bad because it's like I could have went home. I could have gone home. You know what I'm saying? That's something that I don't feel like the girl that I was dealing with at the time could understand for multiple reasons, because that's a whole nother conversation in terms of the fact that she was also the one who couldn't understand why, when it was time for me, when I moved back to DC, why I wouldn't move up to Albany, because her whole thing was she was willing to take care of me. And I'm telling her, I missed out on spending time with my grandmother before she passed. Now my mother is grieving the loss of her mother, and she needs me. And she couldn't really understand that. But that's what happens when you chasing behind somebody who certain things just don't resonate, or certain things just don't register. And you have to over-explain yourself, because you start questioning whether or not you're dealing with this person, and whether it was more so about lust and infatuation, or was it about love. On either side of it, I'm not even trying to put it on her. I put it on me too. You know what I mean? Before I keep going, I want to read a couple of comments from folks. I see some comments. Let me see these joints come up. My main man, my boss forever partner, Ramsey Brown. Appreciate you, my brother. Collective Conscious Media in the building. Appreciate you always for supporting my brother. You know what I mean? Always love and supporting all that good stuff. Lots of love going on in the comments. Definitely appreciate everybody for tapping in. And definitely, please make sure that you share this live as well. But moving ahead to the next couple of lines. Days Inn, Marriott's, Hilton's, and Ramadas. Couple $1,000 had this devil wearing Prada. Brushed off, even lost friends over nonsense. All because of how I knew the tags of women's thongs read. So let me break down the first two bars of that. Of course, Days Inn, Marriott's, Hilton's, and Ramadas. Couple $1,000 had this devil wearing Prada. So the amount of money, when I think about all of the things that I would love to do, be able to do now. Buy a house. Invest more money into my music. A multitude of things. Have a nest egg just sitting around. When I think about the amount of money that I spent chasing behind women that I didn't even end up marrying on hotel rooms, on dates, on all types of stuff. And a lot of times those dates right around the places where we had the hotel rooms, all of these different things that I splurged on that didn't even lead to anything fruitful. And I just think about it, it's like, these are the sacrifices that I made. These thousands of dollars that I spent. Like, when I really think about it, when I really add it up, like, it's thousands of dollars that I spent just so I could, do my thing. I can enjoy myself. I can have fun because that's what I wanted. That was the sacrifice. That's what I gave up. And so that's why it's important when I put up the promo for this thing, when I said, was what you got in return worth what you gave up to get it? And the answer for me is easily no. Because if I'm shelling out thousands of dollars and I don't end up with the person, then it's like, that's an L. And I could easily flip the whole thing. I don't look at L's as losses. I look at them as lessons. But it's like, after a while, it's like, okay, well, if you don't learn the lesson, then it's a loss because you're not learning the lesson properly or you're not applying it. You know what I mean? Shout out to my brother, Jay in the Mix, on the check-in. Thank you so much, my brother, for tapping in for this episode of the Maximum Sentence, breaking down the final verse of Temple Thrills, verse number 3. It wasn't worth it at the end. So I spent all this money for what? I gave it up because I made sex and lust and passion and lovemaking and all of these different things that don't necessarily equate to true love, real love. I made those things my God. I made those things my idol instead of real love, instead of a true way of looking at sex, a healthy way of looking at sex and approaching sex. These are the things that I gave up. And it gets worse. But wait, it gets worse. So then we move ahead, go into those other two lines. Brushed off, even lost friends over nonsense, all because of how I knew the tags in women's thongs read. So that line, those two lines actually refer to a specific situation where there was this girl that I went to college with. And when we were in college, I'm not gonna say I didn't look twice at her, but I looked at her as more of a friend. But then there was a time where like she just started dressing different. She just started looking different. She just started kind of like really coming into her own and owning more of her swagger, owning more of her sexuality. She just jumped off the page for all of us. We all, like, she came to school I think it might have been our junior or senior year. She just came to school. He was like, the same that was first year? That's her? We always like just befuddled because it's like, it's not that she wasn't pretty before, but she just like leveled up more and like caught everybody's attention. So she ended up dating one of my friends. Now, granted, was I super close with him? No, but I did consider him a friend. And she and I ended up, we had been friends long before they knew each other because he was younger than her. And he came in, I think, the year after we got there. And so they ended up dating, I think, either the end of our junior year or basically the beginning of our senior year. Because she and I were the same year, graduating year. And so, yeah, so they dated. They ended up breaking up. She and I stayed in contact. And then, like, feelings kind of sort of started brewing and all of this stuff. And it became a thing like, oh, wow, we really like each other. And so it went down. That's the best way that I could put it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were real feelings, but it ended up going down like probably right around New Year's of like 2003. And so he ended up finding out about it. I don't know whether she told him. I think either she told him or somebody else told him. And so he was like, bro, like, why didn't you say nothing to me? What, like, what's up with that? Now, granted, I was trying to tell him. It was a time that, like, I actually reached out to him and was trying to tell him, but something happened. It was like one of those things off of a soap opera or for a TV show where you have that moment and something comes in and interjects and gives you an out. And so I took the out. Now, granted, in hindsight, I blame myself. I should have been more aggressive and saying, like, look, bro, me and old girl, like, we like each other. I know y'all dated and all of that, but I'm interested in her. So, like, do you have an issue with it? Like, that should have been a man-to-man conversation that I had. But at that time, I was like, I ain't care. I wanted what I wanted. I wanted who I wanted. You know what I'm saying? I was attracted to her. She was attracted to me. It was like, all right, let's go. You know what I'm saying? Let's see where this goes. Now, granted, that might have been arguably worse than the situation before that because of the length of time that it lasted. It didn't last as long. And there was a lot of things that happened really in both of those relationships that, like, the sacrifice, and this is something I don't necessarily talk about in the song, but it's kind of baked into the story of the song, is another sacrifice is emasculation. There were a lot of things that happened in both of those situations where I felt like both of these women strongly emasculated me. They did things to take shots at, like, my manhood in a lot of ways, or to really just kind of sort of make me feel like I wasn't man enough to handle them, or I wasn't this enough, or I wasn't that enough. You know what I mean? And so as a result, it was one of those things, especially in that particular situation, where I started wilding out. It's like, all right, well, if I can't feel this way with you, I'm gonna go chase it somewhere else. And see, that then continues to fuel the pursuit, chasing a high of sorts. It becomes a drug that making sex, making lust, making all of that your idol. You start chasing highs. You start trying to chase that first feeling or that first good feeling. And you want that. You keep wanting it. You keep wanting it, keep wanting it. And then you pursue it. And then you realize it's like, I'm not finding it. I'm not getting it. You know what I'm saying? I know somebody else can relate to that. And, you know what I'm saying, has been through a similar situation. And you can definitely feel free to share it in the comments. But yeah, I definitely want to show some love to some folks that's tapped in. My brother, as always, DJ Shane on the check-in. Appreciate you for tapping in, my brother. They laughing at it went down. That's all I had to say. It went down. Y'all know what I mean. Y'all know exactly what that means. I ain't got to say nothing else. And yes, absolutely. It is definitely a drug. The allure. That is the perfect word for it. The allure of sex. Because it's been in our faces basically our whole lives, especially coming up in the era that we came up in. And it's even worse for these kids now. You know what I'm saying? These teenagers, these young adults, it's even worse now. You know what I'm saying? Because there's not even the romantic factor attached to it. It's just like, it's not there. It's no finesse. I said that in the last episode. There is no finesse game going on right now when it comes to sex and how people talk about sex, how people approach sex. No finesse. But moving on, I'm trying to think. Gave up my computers and the VCRs. Nickelodeons with harlots barely needing bras. That is actually, when I said that there were setup lines for Molly Webb Walker, those are the setup lines. Gave up my computers and the VCRs. That's a reference to watching porn. Nickelodeons with harlots barely needing bras. When you think about a Nickelodeon back in the day, or like, I forget what the exact term was, like, was it bordello? Or it was another B word. I can't think of it right now. But basically a place where you could go in a room and watch a woman dance, seductively, or do certain things behind, like you were behind a curtain or behind glass or whatever. They could see you but you couldn't really touch them. All of that stuff is kind of like the precursor to like strip clubs, but also somewhat of a precursor to like porn. Not necessarily there was sex going on, but like that's the way I viewed it. It's like I'm a voyeur. I'm watching the show, but I'm not a participant in the show. That was another sacrifice because, okay, if I can't get it, then, you know, when I got the feeling, I'm gonna handle it myself. You know, I'm gonna take care of business myself. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to fuel the fantasies that I have even more. And unfortunately, and we'll get more into this as we talk about Molly Webb Walker next week. Unfortunately, it improperly informed the way that I looked at sex on a subconscious level. I was never the type to sit there and like think you just pump and, you know, you doing something. It's like, I knew better. But at the same time, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I ain't get no ideas from watching porn. You know, like a lot of us dudes did. A lot of women do. Let's stop making a thing where it's just like dudes, we the only ones that watch porn. I know plenty of women that watch porn. Plenty. You know, but that was also part of the sacrifice in these comments. Take this me. Ramsey's stupid. Oh man, exactly. Voyeur. Exactly. You know, like that's the perspective that I was sitting from. Because here's another thing that I don't really talk about that often. When it came to sex for me, I didn't get it right here for a good, like probably the first 8 or 9 years that I was having sex. I was dealing with somebody long distance. It was never somebody like frequently that lived right there. So I had to wait and I had to wait and I had to wait before that next time. And by the time that next time came, man, it wasn't enough of them doggone tapes or, you know, Jones online that was going to satisfy that hunger. Like once whoever I was dating came into town, it was on. It was on. Like it was like marathon. That's why I could go marathons in my younger days, because it was like, look, I don't know when the next time I'm gonna see you. It might be a month from now, it might be 2 weeks from now, who knows? It might be 2 months from now. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you finna get it. So I mean that's what I went through at that particular time. Submitting leader jobs just to see these bras, paying tickets off, and I can be in park or even speeding cars. That's a reference to the one girl that I'm talking about that she dated my homie, then I ended up dating her. It was so bad, it got so bad dealing with her that I would literally find ways to call out from work. Cause it was like, look, I'm staying up here. Like I'm good. I'm having a great time. You know what I'm saying? I'm living a lap of luxury. You know what I'm saying? Laid up, all of that good stuff. It's like, I ain't trying to go back to work. You know, like I ain't in no rush to go to work. I was so pressed. Like I would take her, like it was one time I took her to her job that she was working at, and we was kind of going through it at that particular point. And I dropped her at work, and I double parked so quick and went in. What happened was I dropped her off at work, got all the way back. Granted, she lived in Brooklyn in Sheepshead Bay. So I went all the way back to Sheepshead Bay from Manhattan, mind you. I went from Manhattan to Sheepshead Bay, got back to her house, realized she forgot to give me her keys, had to go back into Manhattan, go get her keys from the job. I double parked real quick, came back out, a cop was writing me a ticket. And I was like, yo, I needed to go get these keys. Like I'm locked out at home. And she was like, you still getting this ticket? I'm like, sure, I ain't paying this ticket. She was like, all right, I'll mail it to you. Lo and behold, she mailed it to me. And I ended up having to pay that ticket, all behind a woman that I ended up not even being with, because I was so busy chasing behind that skirt. And, you know, I don't want to just limit the women that I dealt with to just that. But at the same time, when it comes down to it, that was a selling point. The sex was a selling point. And to act like it wasn't, would be me being inauthentic. Y'all know me. When it comes down to breaking these songs down and really talking about a lot of these layered bars, I'm not the type that's gonna sit around and sugarcoat anything. Like, this is what it is. Like, this was my life. These are the things that I did. I'm not proud of it, but it's a part of my story nonetheless. It shaped me and it helped me to mature. It helped me to look at things differently at the end of the day. So we go ahead to but she would be at odds when I'd meet and greet with God. Only when I needed did I sneak to even speak to God. Too ashamed to walk up to that altar call. Every shirt couldn't get the lipstick on my collars off. Member of a church without a good book. Pastor was a master fish and men had a good hook. That's where the reintroduction, the reattachment, the renewal, the attempt to always try to reconnect with God somehow. God will always show up in my life somehow and say, like, bruh, you know you better than this. You know what I'm saying? You know you didn't really even want to go down this path for real, for real. I know who you are. I know what you truly wanted to do in your heart of hearts. You got sidetracked. So I'm trying to bring you back. The thing about God, that's when people always talk about free will. That's a perfect example of God giving us free will. He gave me the will to choose to not go down that path. Because here is where that I was trying to get to with the whole thing about soul ties. And that's where the soul ties part really comes into play here. Member of a church without a good book. Pastor was a master fish and men had a good hook. The good hook, the soul tie. The thing about when you sleep with somebody who you're not married to, whether it's out of marriage, it's in marriage, whatever it might be, when you are with somebody who you are not married to, you create a soul tie with that person. We've heard it plenty of times before. Some people will sit here and try to act like they don't believe in it. No, those things are real. The ties that you create with somebody, they take a piece of you, or they take pieces of you, you take pieces of them. So when you start acting certain ways that you can't explain, you might want to start looking at the soul ties. When I started thinking about some of my behavior in certain situations, I can trace it back to the soul tie that I created with whoever I was with at the time or around that time. And the fact that I never did anything to break that soul tie, that there was no resolution of the situation, that it was just me wanting what I wanted from who I wanted in the time that I wanted it. And then that relationship doesn't go anywhere. That person is the reason why a lot of times it's hard for somebody to let go is because they still have the soul tie with you. You still have it with them. And neither one of you have done anything to really truly break that spell. It's in a lot of ways, it's spell casting. That's one way to look at it. You might not look at it in a way of like, oh, this person waving a wand and, stirring some herbs in a pot or something, like that, like you might see on TV or whatever, but it's still a spell being cast. You cast a spell on that person, they cast one on you. Because you are connecting your spirits and your souls when you are exchanging energy on that level. A lot of times we like to look at it as just physical. It's just sex. We've heard so many times people say it's just sex. It's never just sex. It's never just sex. Even if it is a pop-off jump, it's never just sex. You are exchanging something with that person, and it's not always good. And that's the hook. Better listen to your corner and watch for the hook. Like, for real. That's the hook. That's why Pastor was a master fishing men, had a good hook. The bait is the allure, especially with us men. And I'm not saying women don't get tempted, but men, we get tempted in a totally different way. Because we're not always taught to resist. when the temptation comes around. That's number one. Number two, we don't always get it through. We can't just walk out and just get coochie thrown at us like every time we turn a corner, unless we a certain person. You know what I'm saying? We look a certain way. We got a certain status or whatever it might be. We have whatever je ne sais quoi that we have that draws somebody to us where, yeah, we would get it thrown at us all the time. Whereas women could literally come out the house in a bonnet, bunny slippers, sweatpants, and they getting D appointments like left and right still, if they even halfway decent looking. Bonnet, sweats, bunny slippers, cold barely wiped out their eye, still getting D appointments. Like, that's how much easier it is. So it's like being starved in a desert. You ain't got no water, you ain't got no food, and you in a desert. The first offer of some water you gonna get, you gonna take it. That's the unfortunate downside of being a man when it comes to sex, is that we just take the offer a lot of times, and we don't weigh out the consequences of taking that offer just because it's there, just because it's on the table. You know what I mean? I'm telling y'all, it's when I when I knew that I was gonna have to unpack this song, these are the type of things that I knew I was gonna have to unravel and roll out, because this is a very serious song. Yes, it's a song, you know, I put the hashtag let's talk about sex, but at the same time, it's like, let's talk about it from a very layered perspective. This song is very layered in terms of the things that I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Yes, absolutely, Ramsey. Soul Ties, Kryptonite. That's right. My main man, Brian. What's going on, my brother? Said, Fire Joe, it's your boy, Brian. Thanks for blessing us. Thank you, my brother, for tuning in. You know what I'm saying? Always a pleasure to see you. Lady Crawley said, run. Yes, and yes, Ramsey, shout out Cool Breeze, watch for the hook. You knew where that bar came from. You know what I mean? He said bonnet, sweats, bunny slippers. That's your next song, dog. It just might. Thank you for that idea. But yeah, you know, but that's the thing. Because I made sex my idol, anything you put before God is an idol. I don't care what it is. I don't care who it is. Anything you put before God is an idol. That is your God. And God don't take kindly to that. Because it's like, what is that going to do for you more than what I'm going to do for you? How is that going to deliver you more than I can deliver you? What strength are you going to gain from that? What knowledge, wisdom are you going to gain from that? What understanding? What love? What gentleness? What loving kindness? What fruits of the Spirit are you going to gain from any of that versus being obedient to me? Versus listening to me, versus following me. That's what God was saying to me, or trying to say to me at that time. And I wasn't listening because I was so busy serving this idol. So busy chasing after skirts. So busy chasing this whole thing of, you know, what I would read and say Maxim magazine. Because don't even get me started about how I used to get Maxim magazine and used to read the little sex columns or whatever, like how they, like all the little pointers they gave about sex and stuff like that. Like I used to read them joints religiously. And I use the word religiously because every month I got me a copy of Maxim magazine. I didn't care about nothing else they was talking about in that magazine. I went straight to the sex column. I'm like, all right, what they talking about this month? And I would literally take a lot of those pointers. Now, granted, I will say this. A lot of those pointers helped. I'm not even going to sit here and hold you. A lot of those pointers helped, but I shouldn't have been using them with anybody that I wasn't married to. And that's just being real. You know, going back to my original plan, I've said this before, was to get married by 23. Now, granted, it might not have been 23, but I kind of knew me. I was like, look, I ain't trying to wait too long to do this. So find me a jump by the time I'm 23. Like, all right, let's get married. We had kids, boom, by 25. That was the plan. You know, it didn't work out that way, clearly. But even if I didn't even if it wasn't 23, I still should have waited. Because the problem was it ended up tainting the way that I looked at sex. And it ended up affecting all of my interactions after that first time, or after those first couple of times, because it created unrealistic expectations of what sex should be between the women that I had sex with, between watching pornography, between everything that I would read and see in TV and film and hearing music and all of these different things. It created unrealistic expectations of what sex should be. Instead of, if I would have paid more attention to what God said about sex, then I wouldn't have gone through half of what I went through. I wouldn't have had a lot of feelings of being unfulfilled, or feeling like, okay, I'm chasing, but what am I trying to find? What am I catching at the end of this chase? Those are the things that I had to deal with, you know what I mean? So then after I say Pastor was a master fisherman, had a good hook, I ain't saying I'm resolved overnight, just acknowledging I chose to see her wrongs over right. All her darkness over light, her mirages over sight. Got me with the booby trap, but her bra was over height. I just love that line. Got me with the booby trap, but her bra was over height. That's a double entendre, because you don't think of booby trap in terms of boobies. You just think a trap that somebody set for you and you caught. But it's a play on words, because it's like, we're talking sex. And if I'm being real, you know what I'm saying? I feel like every dude has a preference of a woman's body that they like. Well, every straight dude has a preference of a woman's body that they enjoy more. Some dudes are booty men, some dudes are leg men, some dudes are, you know, they focus more on the face. They like feet, whatever it might be. I've always been a breast guy. So me saying got me with the booby trap, but her bra was over height, that was on purpose for multiple reasons. Because it was like, this is the way that you're going to get me. You're going to lure me with all of these boobies in my face, you know. But at the same time, it's like, you stuffing your bra. That ain't real. You know what I'm saying? What you got up in there, that ain't real. That ain't you. You know what I mean? Like, you got all type of stuff going on up in there. Socks and silicone joints and everything but what's really in there, everything but what's real. That's really the point. Everything but what's real. And what's real, at least in my view, is what God says is real when it comes to sex, and how we should approach sex, and how we have to navigate that world, because it's such a precious and sacred thing. We don't always treat it that way, but it really is. And it took me getting older. It took me learning a lot of hard lessons, going through pain, putting others through pain, in order to learn that lesson. That sex is way too precious to play around with. That stuff could get you killed, Slim. Like, seriously, you know. And I appreciate that, Brian. He said, Joe, you preaching. Yes, sir. You know, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's real out here. It's really a soul tie. You create these soul ties, but it's really a spiritual attack in a lot of ways. If you're not careful, if you are sleeping with the wrong woman, that's a spiritual attack, because it could be a thing where that's the way that she ropes you in to keep you coming back. Or if it's a guy for the women, that's the way he keeps you coming back, how he ropes you in. Because I don't want to make it seem like it's just women. Like, it definitely ain't just women. There's a lot of women out here getting trapped by these dudes out here. Like, you know, they dickmatized. Just keeping it real. You know what I'm saying? But that's the key. It's like, once you realize that you went through all of these things to get it, and it's not fulfilling you, and it's not giving you what you were hoping that it would give you, what are you going to do to break the cycle? And that's one of the biggest reasons why I said I ain't saying I'm resolved overnight, just acknowledging I chose to see her wrongs over right. Like, there's a lot of work that still has to be done from years and years and years of bad programming. And I'm putting in the work, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's also saying like we talking decades, and it's still being thrown in our faces to this day. Now, granted, I'm a lot more mature. I'm not a teenager. I'm not a 20-something-year-old who's a lot more susceptible. But at the same time, if you've already internalized a lot of these things and you haven't taken the steps in order to undo what you've learned, then you're going to continue to struggle. And you're going to continue to look at sex from a very immature perspective, you know. And then, of course, the last couple of lines where I say, what we had, it felt great, can't erase past, but you can't use my blood for your stained glass. You can't take my life force, or you can't have my life and use it to decorate your temple. Let me say that again. You can't use what gives me life and use that to decorate your temple, to adorn your temple and make it look the way that you want it to look, to beautify it. Like, no, you can't have me. You've had enough of me. You've taken enough of me. I'm done giving you my sacrifices. That's why the hook is so important. I done made you my idol too long, so we must part ways. Cause I'm losing my soul trying to give you all my praise. All of this, there's a reason why there's a religious theme. Because again, whatever you put before God or whoever you put before God is your God. That is your idol. You put anything or anyone before God, whether it's sex, whether it's money, whether it's women, men, whether it's your career, whether it's your house, your possessions, whether it's attention, no matter what it is, if you put that before God, that is your God. And that's a very slippery slope, and it's a very dangerous slope. And I don't care how you view God, how you call, what you call God, it doesn't matter to me. But what does matter, and I'm not sitting here trying to tell anybody what to do. I'm not that person. All I can say is, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Lord Joshua 24:15 for y'all. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I'm moving. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Again, however you call God, it is what it is. Universe, Allah, whatever. I don't get into all that. I don't get into all that. But whatever you call God, higher force, creator, whatever you put before who your God is, what you call God, that's your God. And you can't serve them both. You can't do both. I understood that from a spiritual perspective as much as I didn't want to admit it during the time. I couldn't do both because I couldn't be up in church sitting here, singing God's praises and all this and all that, reading the word and praying and this and that and the third, knowing I'm out here living in sin, or at least what I felt like was living in sin. At least what I recognized the word as saying is living in sin. I couldn't do it. I didn't feel right. It didn't sit right with my spirit. And it made me ashamed to go to church. It made me ashamed to be around people that I knew had a stronger walk with God than I did. And I'm not saying that those people were perfect, but at least they were making the effort. I allowed shame to keep me from going into the spaces that I knew I belonged. I knew I belonged with God. This is a very spiritual song, more sometimes than I even recognize myself. It's a very spiritual song, and it's not the obvious God song, but on a subconscious level and a conscious level, it is very much a God song, because it's like, who will you choose? What will you choose? That's what it boils down to. And I got to a point where it was like, that doesn't sit right with my spirit. It just doesn't. And I think that's really the place where I can leave it. And I think that if there's any advice that I could give anybody, and again, I'm not here to judge anybody's lifestyle. I mean, you'll see from the plethora of songs that I have out now, the plethora of songs that I plan on releasing, I am highly flawed. I am highly imperfect. Y'all know me. I am Mr. Accountability, Transparency, and Vulnerability. ATV. You know what I'm saying? That should be my new nickname, ATV. But at the same time, a lot of the songs that I make are cautionary tales. And it's to say, you could go down this road if you want. But understand that when you go through some of the things that you go through, there's an explanation for it. There's a reason behind it. It's not on accident. There are, as my sis, and I always quote her. I always quote my sis, Tiana Talea. There are no coincidences in life, only divine appointments. And you can even bust that down to when you choose to do things outside of how God wants us to do things. You end up getting an appointment that you might not necessarily want, but it's an appointment nonetheless. So it's all about choices. What will you choose? Who will you choose? And all I can say is, if you want peace, it's up to you. You make the choice that will put you the most at peace, but make sure that you choose wisely. That's all I can say. Make sure that you choose wisely. It's all up to you. It's all about what you can handle. And, you know, people got to stop saying it's just sex. It's never just sex. Sex is heavy. You can never minimize it to just sex. And anybody who does is fooling themselves. I've literally seen people who try to make it just sex, and it's still affecting them. They got things going on with them they can't even understand, because they're not acknowledging those ties that they're creating every time they lay down with somebody. The reason why they can't see themselves in a healthy relationship. Well, if you're out here smashing everything moving, it's like, I mean, how are you going to be in a healthy relationship? How are you going to want to be in a healthy relationship when you can't settle down with just one person? It's not going to happen until you decide, like, I want better for myself. I have to break this cycle. Again, I'm not judging anybody, but I'm just saying we can't just limit it to just sex. Sex is a beautiful thing when it's with somebody who you are meant to be with. It can be beautiful when it's not. I'm not going to sit here and say that, you know, it's not beautiful outside of that, but I'm going to say that for me and my experience, it has been the most beautiful. It's been the most gratifying. It's been the most satisfying. It's been the most fulfilling when it has been in the confines that it should have been in from the very start. At least what I know for myself. Everybody else has a different truth, but I can only speak for myself, you know. And I think I'm going to leave that there. So if anybody has any other comments that they want to chip in, or any experiences they want to share in the comments, definitely feel free to do so. I definitely appreciate all the comments and all of the support everybody has been showing. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. Decades, bro. Decades. Like, it's not a joke. You know, said use your blood like vampire on these streets. Absolutely. That's right. Sucking the lifeblood out of you, and then use it to paint on they stained glass. That's the stained glass. Like, oh, look at this conquest that I got. Joseph Lawrence Goins gave up all of this for me so I could decorate this part of the glass. That's this person. Whole bunch of people got their blood just stained on glass, all for the sake of this one thing that is like, yeah, it's cool, but it's not the most important thing in the whole wide universe. You know what I mean? So anyway, if all of that hasn't compelled you to buy my single, Temple Thrills, featuring my brother in love, Jalil, I don't know what else is going to, but you know what I mean? That's what this song does. That's the beauty of this song. So much packed into 5 minutes and 25 seconds. I think it's 5 minutes, 25 seconds of just layered bars. talking seriously about sex, having a real conversation through rap about sex. If you don't have a single, Temple Thrills, back with Molly Webb Walker, which we'll talk about next week. Please make sure that you go to my Bandcamp page and get that, ajthrowback.bandcamp.com. Once again, that's ajthrowback.bandcamp.com. Or you can go to my website, which is bammllc.net. Once again, that's bammllc.net/music if you just want to go straight to the music page. But if you go to my home page, it's literally like when you scroll through all of the stuff that I have, the highlights, that's the first thing that's up there is the new single Temple Thrills. Once again, back with Molly Webb Walker. Thank you to everybody so far who has bought the single, everybody who will buy the single after tonight and beyond. Also, just everybody who's just thrown love and just commented, everybody who's been tuning in for these past 3 episodes of the Maximum Sentence. I definitely appreciate the engagement. I appreciate the support and the love that y'all continue to support my music through this run of the Late Bloomer series. If you're not already following me on social media, please do so. I am at AJ Throwback on Facebook and Twitter, and at a.j.throwback on Instagram and TikTok, and right here on YouTube I am at AJ Throwback 928. So definitely, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please make sure that you do so. Hit those bell notifications so whenever I go live, post a new video, premiere a new video, you'll be among the first to know. And also make sure that you like, comment, and share this video with somebody. If this was valuable for you, please make sure that you share it with somebody and add value to their day as well. Who knows? It might be some things that they might have been feeling themselves as well. You know, that's why I created this series, to create deeper conversation beyond just the music. So definitely appreciate the support. Everybody who will watch this on the replay, I appreciate you for watching this. Everybody who's watching this live, I appreciate you. Also, the merch. Y'all see it? I got the Batch Dad hat on. I also have this shirt that is actually connected to my single Loner's Remorse. Says I need a drink after a long, hard day of people, and which I definitely do after the day. It was jive rough today. So yeah, I got me some Syrah sitting in the refrigerator waiting with my name on it. So I definitely plan on sipping that. But anyway, if you like the gear, I got this and I got plenty more. Make sure that you hit up my website, bammllc.net/shop batch. Once again, bammllc.net/shop batch. You can definitely make sure that you follow me on Facebook and Instagram at batch.202 or on Twitter at batch_202. Make sure that you check out the merch, you know, see something you like. Definitely always feel free to support. I'm going to be adding some more merch up on the site very soon, so definitely be on the lookout for that. Couple of programming notes for y'all. So I'm not sure if we're going to be having an episode this Tuesday on Return to Black Broadway podcast. We may or may not, but definitely stay tuned for that. I will definitely be back on the radio this Thursday on the Underground Lab Radio for Turntable Thursdays with DJ Shane and Ryan Lucas. This week we will be doing a tribute to the Fugees. So y'all definitely want to make sure that y'all tune in for that. That is the Underground Lab Radio, the undergroundlab.com/radio. Turntable Thursdays from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Underground Lab Radio. Once again, the Underground Lab Radio, the undergroundlab.com/radio. Definitely make sure that y'all check it out. And then the next night, I forget who the Friday Night Fights is this week, but definitely make sure that y'all tune in starting at 7 p.m. My man DJ Shane is going to have a pre-fight mix at 7, and then at 7:30 will be the main event. I got to double check with him to see who the battle is with this week, so definitely make sure that y'all tune in for that. I think it's actually The Roots versus, it might be a Tribe Called Quest. I think it's The Roots versus a Tribe Called Quest. Shane, let me know if you still hear whether or not I got that right. But it's gonna be a dope battle no matter what. So y'all definitely make sure that y'all stay tuned for that. That's this Friday, starting at 7 p.m. with the free fight mix with DJ Shane, and then 7:30 will be the main event on the undergroundlab.com/radio. But before you even get to Friday Night Fights, be doing another episode of Flowers Friday starting at noon Eastern Standard Time, and that's going to be on my Instagram, a.j.throwback. Make sure that y'all definitely tap in for that. Always gets a lot of love, a lot of support for that platform. I'm so proud of that platform. And then next Sunday at noon Eastern Standard Time, we will be talking about Molly Webb Walker, which is the B-side to Temple Thrills. Once again, that's Molly Webb Walker, the B-side to Temple Thrills, next Sunday, February 12th, starting at noon Eastern Standard Time. I made it early enough so it wouldn't get in the way of the Super Bowl, because y'all know it's Super Bowl Sunday. I wanted to make sure that I kind of stay with Sunday, but I did that joint early because it's like once I'm done with that joint, everything after that is about the Super Bowl. So yeah, definitely make sure that y'all tap in for that. All right, so I appreciate everybody for tuning in, whether you tuned in live, whether you tuned on a replay. I appreciate all the support and everything. And thank you, my brother Illville, the producer, said nothing but dopeness. I appreciate you, my brother. Appreciate you, Brian, Ramsey, Shane, Lady Crawley, Jay in the mix. I'm trying to make sure that I covered everybody that showed up in the comments and everything. Thank y'all so much for tuning in and supporting this single. And I will see y'all next Sunday for another episode of The Maximum Sentence, where there's conviction behind the bars. Once again, I've been your man, AJ Throwback. Y'all enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. Enjoy a full, wonderful, blessed, empowered week. And see y'all next week. Peace. Hold on. I got to shout out my sister Anonymous Touch. Came in at the end. Appreciate you so much, my sister. You know what I'm saying? If you missed any of it, you already know what to do. Hit me on a replay. But the fact that you showed up, the whole family here. You know what I'm saying? So definitely appreciate you. And once again, y'all tune in next Sunday for another edition of The Maximum Sentence, where there's conviction behind the bars. Peace, y'all.